Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Let's Talk It Out podcast. I'm your host and moderator, Alec aka Trey Busy. I want to thank everybody for tuning in live last week when Ashley came on. She was a great guest. She's doing a lot of good things for the community, and she's working hard on building her own brand with her podcast, Semicolon Podcast. So, Ashley, thank you for coming on last week. She's actually in the chat room right now. So, I also want to say that I am grateful for everybody that's subscribed to the network. I don't think the people that listen and are subscribed to the network enough. It's so funny. I was on Facebook today and I saw the reminder, the post that when I first announced I was going to create the podcast. It was a year ago today that I announced I was going to create the podcast. It didn't actually launch on this day, but that's when I announced that I was going to work towards creating it. So that's a pretty cool thing to see. Like a year went by that fast. That's pretty, that's crazy how time works. So, I don't want to go too much further because I do have a special guest on the line with me. I'm just going to bring him in, man. James Koziar. James, how you doing tonight?
Oh, not so bad. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be here. I'm blessed to be able to have a conversation. And, I'm happy that you were able to be here to have a conversation with me as well. So before I go into the hard questions, James, I want you to tell people a little bit about yourself, about who you are.
Okay. Well, my name's James Koziar. Let's see. Born in 1981 and, grew up in a pretty typical military family. Both my parents were in the military. So pretty strict environment growing up, not really having any sort of outlet, so to speak, in terms of emotional or anything like that. So, that's sort of shaped my mentality and, the way that I deal with things mentally and emotionally growing up. And, basically I ended up finding my own ways to deal with not having outlets. And, I started smoking cigarettes at, 11 years old. And then on from there, alcohol showed up at 15 years old. So, that very first night that I had alcohol, I found my way to get around, the emotional abuse, the physical abuse that I got growing up. And, I had no worries whatsoever when I drank alcohol. So, and that played out throughout my entire young adult life, and all of that psychological development, as well as, turning into the person that I'm trying to be. And, it was just a, horrible way to grow up. But anyways, so after that, I followed in my parents' footsteps. I joined the military, and I've been in the military for 16 years, and been on 9 deployments, and that whole time, dealing with separation from family and friends, and anything that I dealt with had alcohol attached to it, whether it be fun or whether it be bad issues in my life. So, it got to the point where obviously the medication didn't work, which is, the alcohol. And approximately 3 years ago, I decided to take my life. And that included burning my house down around me. And, that was a pretty crazy night for me. A lot of it I don't remember. A lot of it was told to me by my ex-wife and others that were there that night. And there's a lot of things that I still don't know about my past because I'm the type of drinker that blacks out. And, so there's a lot of things that I did in my past that were bad because of alcohol and, my way of dealing with things. And so it's pretty tough to deal with that. But, that night I also had an extreme spiritual experience. I can remember choking on smoke, and, my choice was to stay in the house. And something else had another idea for me and for my future. I could remember seeing myself walk away from the house. Like I could physically see my body walking away from the house, but I was still at the house. And, and then I went from that vision to literally complete darkness just surrounded me. And then I could hear voices, and I could hear people talking. I could hear the grass crunching underneath my feet, and I could feel like the cold of the fall air on my body. And then I ended up in my neighbor's house, and I could remember hearing everybody talk, but I still had this pitch black just surrounding me. And after that, I ended up in my neighbor's house, and I heard somebody ask a question, "James, what do you need?" And I said, "A blanket." And as soon as I felt the blanket touch my skin, like I felt like I was looking straight up, and I was instantly surrounded by this bright light. And it's indescribable. It's a place that you don't ever want to leave from, that's for sure. But, then I was awoken by an officer that was asking me if I was James Koziar, and I said yes. And I was just kind of confused and dazed as to what was going on and stuff. I got arrested for arson at that time. And I spent 5 days in jail on suicide watch. And then, I never spoke with a judge or anybody else. And they just kind of released me. And so there's nobody there to pick me up. Nobody was there. And so I ended up just walking down the street and some sweatpants and socks and a shirt that my neighbors had given the cops that night. And I ended up going back to my house, or going back to my neighbor's house that night, and reached out to my supervision. And I said, "Hey, I need help. I don't know what's going on." And so I thank God for the military for me. They have been instrumental in me getting to where I am today. They jumped, and they got me checked into a place to get myself checked out and figure out what the heck was going on with me, because I had no clue. And for years this has been an issue, and nobody had an idea of what it was that we were dealing with as a family. And so I got checked in, 2 weeks of inpatient treatment, psych evaluation, and I got diagnosed with major depressive disorder, severe alcoholism, and stuff like that. And then so I got put on an antidepressant, a small dose of antidepressant. And then basically from there, I went into 28 days of rehab for alcoholism. Shortly after that, my family, my ex-wife and my two kids, they got put into a church house that their church provided for them. And, I wasn't welcome there because of the arrest. So, basically, we couldn't be together after that. Her family, our family, her side of the family, basically completely disowned me at that point in time. which was tough for me. And it was tough for me to sober up and just face all of that crap that, I had created, not knowing what I was creating. So, I went through that, and then, we struggled with what to do with the house and where to live. The first year, we ended up trying to get, we tried to fight the insurance company for a little bit, but they turned us down. They denied our claim because I was arrested for arson. And so we pretty much lost everything that we ever owned in that one night. And then, my ex-wife had to deal with all of this on her own, except for the, few family and friends that helped her out. But, she was put through a lot in the years prior, and then just being, thrown into some crazy chaos like that was, it was pretty tough for her to take on. But, we ended up having to file for bankruptcy because of the, not being able to fix the house and pay for it. So, we ended up, we tried to fix it. We tried to gut it out and get it prepared for insurance, but, in the church and a crap ton of friends and military people helped us out. But, in the end, it just didn't work out. And, we were left with a big mess. So we ended up having to file bankruptcy, and then, we're still struggling with, the alcoholism, the depression. We went through the pink cloud phase of getting back together, and, then you have, friends and family, putting in their opinions as to how, your family should do and how your family should be. And then you have other relationships that started in the past due to those circumstances that, you can't really blame the people for making those decisions because they didn't know what the hell was going on. But, there's all kinds of side effects or consequences to things. And sometimes those can be more negative decisions. But, so the first year we dealt with the bankruptcy and trying to find a place to live. We ended up living with a military family in their basement, and hugely grateful for that. That was huge to take in a mess like what we had, and to offer your house for us to live in. Was extremely awesome, and so we did that. I ended up living, because of the back and forth with a split up between my ex-wife and I ended up living in about over 21 different places in the first 2 years after the fire. But during this time, I had three close calls on the relapses, and that was due to just not knowing how to deal with everything that was going on. Obviously, I quit smoking and drinking the night of the fire, so trying to find a way around an even bigger mess now of life was pretty hard to take on for me. And so there was times where I would buy a bottle of alcohol, sit in my truck somewhere, and just cry, wishing I could just chug this liter of vodka, and just get away. And I thank God that, he was there for me, because that's the only person that was there for me in those moments that I ended up alone. So hugely grateful to that. And so, the second year, had a relapse on depression symptoms because the anniversary came up, and then, I wrote home to see if, us as a family could go visit the family for Christmas. And, obviously I was told I was not welcome back there. And so that put our relationship in another strain, because now my ex-wife has got to choose between me or her family. And obviously, I'm not going to win that situation. So I was asked to leave again. And so that's another moment that I had to pack my stuff and leave. And come to find out later on, now I know what detox actually is. But I ended up detoxing off of my prescription for depression. And, it put me in, a really bad depressive state. It physically, it wrecked me because I messed up my sleep. It messed up all kinds of stuff. And I went, one time we got back together, I went over in the middle of the night to the apartment, and we got back together. It was fine. And then I tried it again in this major depressive state and all this stuff. And it didn't work out. It scared my ex-wife. So she called, church friends and stuff like that. And they sort of all convened on me and, kind of went a little bit crazy about it for obvious reasons. I mean, you show up in the middle of the night, you're going to scare somebody. Times have changed. You can't just show up at somebody's house and play a stereo outside and be like, hey, let's get together. Can't do that stuff. But
the careless whisper through the radio while you're holding it outside the girl's house you love.
Yeah. You can't do those kinds of things anymore. And for good reason. I mean, the world's changed, and stigma has grown and all that kind of stuff. But so that happened. So everybody convened on me at the church elder's house, and they started yelling at me and saying, "You need Jesus," and you need. And then the pastor would blurt out confidential stuff that I've talked to him about. Like saying I'm thinking wrong, like mentally I'm thinking wrong. Like he'd bring up, you're having dreams about your wife having sex and all this stuff. And I'm like, what the heck, man? Like, first off, that's confidential. Secondly, like that's normal, like dreams that you should have about your wife. So, the only thing I could do is just sit there and just cry and just watch all these people react to my actions. And, there's no way I could explain any of it. And so, I have to just sit there and take it. And, I've pretty much had to sit there and take it for the last 3 years. People making decisions for me. And, so that happened, and I got checked right back into, treatment for another, I think it was 2 weeks. But the second day that I checked in, I had a police officer show up and submit a no contact order for my wife and kids, no contact whatsoever. And that was pretty tough to take. And then my same pastor shows up and says, well, now you don't even have to worry about your wife and kids anymore. Like, you have no restraints now. You just get to focus on yourself. And it's like, well, you're still missing, like, I just want my family. Like, there's nothing else that I want. Everybody's still looking at this thing like it's just, sheer craziness. And it's like, well, I'm still stuck with not having that voice now because of what happened. So let's see, a week after I get out of there, basically I don't show up to the court, and my pastor and everybody's telling me to show up to court to fight for my kids. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, if I can't explain to you people in a single room, how am I going to go to a judge and explain to a judge that, hey, this is all just a big misunderstanding? And so I didn't go. And from my understanding is, if the father does not show up, then pretty much it just gets extended for a complete year. So basically the no contact order gets extended for a year. And so I'm stuck with that now. And during that 2 weeks that I was in inpatient treatment at that time, I got a new prescription and got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder by a guy that I've never met before. And he talked to me 2 times, 2 days for like 20 minutes each. And so I got diagnosed with a borderline personality disorder. And I never saw the guy again. And so everybody's like, oh, wow, that's, the pastor, and other people are like, okay, well, that explains a lot about you and why you are the way you are. Like, well, okay, that doesn't help. So during this whole 2-year process, like, I've been through AA, countless hours of AA, countless hours of therapy, countless hours of substance abuse counseling. And, I've had to go through all of that and, try to find another job, because now I'm being evaluated by the military to see if I'm safe. And so I ended up getting a job at Dillon's, slicing meat in a deli, which is freaking awesome. It was nice to just kind of hang out with people and just have something else to do besides worry about everything else.
Did you get free meat?
Yes, I did.
Excellent.
And I was asked to sample everything that they had, so it was nice. But and I'm also at this time trying to, build up a resume and all these other things to try and offer myself to more jobs. And I'm still struggling, like, to try and be with my family and go through all these other therapies. And then, on top of AA and the regular therapy, now I have to take a specialized therapy for borderline personality disorder, which is DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. And so those are 10-week courses for each module, and I can't remember how many there are. I've done 2, and I think there's like 5 of them. But anyways, I guess it depends on where you go to. So while I worked for the deli department for 2 months, and then I get this job offer in the email for this big company, like one of the biggest in the world. And they're like, are you interested in this job? It's for, field engineer. And I'm like, well, yeah, I am. And at this point, I'm separated from my wife and kids again, living with the elders from the church. And again, great people. Learned a lot about God and, just being human from these people. And anyway, so I get this email offer, and I'm like, heck yeah. And it's funny because, I've 30-something years old working in a deli department, and I have this huge technical background from the Air Force, and, just working in a deli department. The manager there, she's like, you're leaving, aren't you? I'm like, well, yeah, kind of. But so she was pretty upset that I was leaving, but I met a lot of good people there. Heard a lot of hard stories there. Had a friend, Cody, and others there that were struggling with some life stuff. Cody, he would struggle with straight up. What do you call it when you zone out, or disassociation? He found his brother after he committed suicide, and so he would literally go somewhere else while we were at work, and you'd have to be there to try and snap him out of it, or just catch him when he falls. And it's just crazy. And then there's another woman that worked there with me, older woman, and I always called her bro and dude, and so she responded in kind, which is pretty fun. And then her husband was dying from cancer, so I mean, it's just crazy the people you get to meet, and the people you get to pray for and pray with. But yeah, so I got offered that job. I accepted it, and my ex-wife was complaining about that at the time too. She was actually going to file for divorce at that point in time, and I said, "Hey, I'm taking this job. I'm going to be leaving around this time." And she's like, "Okay, well, I'm not going to sign the divorce papers and stuff like that." And so this is kind of how things played out for the last 3 years between us, and the back and forth, like, are you going to stay or are you going to go type thing, which sucked really bad for me because I never knew, like, when I was going to get the hammer dropped, And so I take the job regardless of what she was going to do, because I need something. I need something to, progress in my life. And so I take it, and I have to go to a school down in Texas to basically see if I can even get the job. You have to go through the interview process, and then you have to go through a school and also pass the school. So, going through all that crap with my family, and the therapy and AA, and just trying to figure out all of this stuff with my mental health, and trying to get my life back together some way, somehow. Extremely difficult to focus on. And I have ADD also, so that doesn't help. But yeah, so I go down to Texas. I passed the school, and it was a crunch course. And this was right after the hurricane hit. I think it was Harvey, but so it was pretty messed up down there. We ended up going up to Pennsylvania for a bit, and then down to Texas. But they took a 6-month course and crunched it down into 5 weeks, or 8 weeks if you add the HR courses. But struggled through that, and trying to figure out, I was doing AA down there also while I was at school, and I was learning stuff that I've never even thought of learning before. Not to mention, like, I've never looked at these types of engines before, and turbines, and so it was just, everything is just always new every single day for me, trying to deal with this crap. And so that goes through good, and come back, get back with the family again. It's just back and forth with the family. And so we get to the third year, still working, and everything's going fine. And now we're 7 months in. Now we're 7 months into the no contact order, and I reach out to my church elder. I'm like, "Can you please go to a session with my therapist so we can figure something out? Because I want to know if either my family's getting back together, or if we're just going to call it done and just move on." And so church elder goes with me to a therapy session, and they both agree with me. They said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want to know if I'm getting back with my family or if we're moving on. I can't just sit around for a year wondering what the heck's going to happen with my family." And so they agree. And so with a letter, and it would be handled between them, have a middleman deliver the letters. So I write a letter and, state what I want, what I expect, kind of what I've been up to and doing and stuff. And I get another one. I write that letter, and then the pastor comes and meets up with us, and he's basically like, okay, so getting back together, all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to have a conversation right now and just tell you that I don't trust you. And because of how the whole situation's been handled with the mental health stuff, my family, and he's basically called me the antagonist in this story to my face, and, told me at certain times that I was using my sickness as an excuse. And I'm just like, I can't, these types of people are not going to help me progress in my life. And they're definitely not going to help progress my family towards being together. So I had to basically end that kind of relationship right there. And, he left from there, and then the church elder handled the letter for me. And so yeah, she got the letter, and she responded with her being upset with how I handled the pastor, and how, this person's been through a lot with us and been trying to help us. And I'm like, I get that, but if you want to know how I'm feeling or where I'm coming from, or, anything in regards to whatever's happened, you need to talk to me straight up. You don't need to talk to anybody else or through anybody else, or listen to anybody else for that matter, because you're going to get all kinds of information from somebody else, and it's not going to be about anything from me. It's going to be from them. And so, and that's been a constant within the last 3 years. But anyways, I'm doing really well with this new job, successfully, getting through the beginning stages of this thing. And, it's been great, to where, it's working out well for me. I'll just say that. And, Christmas comes up again in the, second year. And at this point, my family and I are back together again. And, so we're like, okay, we want to go home for Christmas. Let's try this again. So I literally buy a plane ticket, fly back to Atlanta to try and meet with her parents to, talk about all this stuff that's happened. And, they denied me to come and see them. They said, well, mom's sick. We can't really meet up, and it's just not the time. So basically I got denied, another conversation to get through stuff. And, and it shows how, it's not just the addict that becomes sick from this stuff. It's, literally the entire family. And so, so that didn't work out. And then from there, obviously, the past repeated itself again. And, yeah, so we separated again. She came home one day. I'm like, all right, are we going to talk about anything at all? And she said, I'm filing for divorce. I talked to a lawyer today. I'm like, what the heck? Okay. We can keep doing the same things, or we can actually do something different. I don't understand. And so she chose to keep doing the same things. And, so I moved out, got an apartment, and, 3 weeks goes by, and my work season's coming up, and I'm like, hey, when should I expect this divorce paperwork so that I can, work it around my job? I don't want to be messing with this while I'm out of town. So she literally says that the lawyer's dragging his feet. I don't know why it's taking so long. I'll call him tomorrow. Well, the next day I just went and filed. Just got it done in one day. And so, I call her, let her know, and then she's all pissed off at me because, hey, you wanted this, you did this. And I'm like, why are you upset with me? Like, this is what everybody else is telling you to do. I'm just going through with it, and now you're mad at me. And, you know, these are all things that I haven't wanted for the last 3 years or the last 20 years of our relationship. And it's just, you know, after 3 years of going through all my therapy and, you know, learning new ways to deal with stuff, like, I got to a point now where I'm just like, okay, well, I need to start making decisions for me. And, you know, sitting there being thrown back and forth is mentally draining and, you know, makes me struggle with, you know, decisions that I make. And, you know, throughout the whole time, you know, I'm being told I'm not good enough. You know, the things that I've done to change aren't good enough. You haven't done enough. You know, been called a child during this whole time. You know, been told you're an adult, you should be acting differently during this whole ordeal. And, you know, those are all like very destructive ways of handling mental illness and just people in general. You know, it's very destructive types of ways to handle people. And so our divorce finalized this past March. And so, you know, I got an email while I was at work saying that it was finalized. So I didn't really get a chance to kind of go through all that because I was working 16-hour plus days. And so on my way home, I got to start downloading, you know, the divorce and coming home, not going to be able to see my kids and all that stuff. So it's been pretty upsetting, but at the same time, like, I don't want to, you know, I listened to her parents, you know, in the process of the divorce, and they talked me into, you know, taking away my visitation rights before the papers were finalized. So that kind of screwed me. They said, when you come back in town, just, you know, ask her for visitation, and, you know, you should be able to get visitation. That has not worked out at all. So I haven't seen my kids for a while. And she's also cut off communication with my kids because I tell them the truth about what's happened in the last 3 years, and including the suicide and all of that stuff and drinking. And my kids are the closest to God that I can say that I've been, other than my experience, because, you know, all kids are closest to God that you can get until the world kind of, you know, ruins it and they become adults, right? They should know better. But my daughter said after the fire, you know, if that's what it took for Dad to meet God, then I'm okay with it. And it's pretty huge. I mean, but yeah, so here I am now, still alive and pushing forward, and working on a bunch of stuff still. You know, there's a lot of things that I want to accomplish in regards to, you know, helping people with mental health and substance abuse, and it's tough to know where to start, especially when you have to, you know, you have to have a job, you have to have, we'll say, these adult responsibilities, right? Which I'd rather just call them human responsibilities, because, you know, having as a human, you need it to have a place to live, feed the human body and all that stuff. But that's you know, a huge distraction of how you can help other souls on this planet. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's the struggle for me. Like, the divorce is finalized now, so you know, my father-in-law, you know, kind of echoed my pastor's words and said, you have no restraints now, you know, you don't have a family to worry about and all that crap. So yeah, I'm trying to figure out what my next steps are. I know my kids know a lot better now. I have actually a better relationship now than I did before the fire. Like we literally meet up and it's like we jump back into the same, same routine with each other. It's not like a tough thing to do, like to meet back up. There's no ill feelings or anything like that with them. And it's truly a blessing. And they're ridiculously smart. Kids are. I don't think we give them enough credit. To where at some points I think they're far smarter than us. But especially in terms of love and compassion. But yeah. So that's about where I'm at, man. I don't know, like there's way more I could add, but I mean that's just a basic breakdown.
Well, James, before I go any further, what I have to say, I want to say the chat room was 100% backed you. They have been very supportive of you. I'm reading some of the comments now. They are saying things like, well, my mom was like, she said, is he in therapy? In his therapy 12-step program, does he have a sponsor for a support source? But before we get into that, my boy Gaines says, thank you for his service. He was in the military as well. He says he appreciates your transparency tonight. And he said, I will keep this man in heavy prayer. I want to talk with this guy. Feel free to give him my number, bro, so I can connect you guys after we're done with the podcast. My mom says, thank you for your transparency. How are you doing with your recovery? How are you your counseling going for your mental health? How do you handle or cope with triggers? It's a bunch of questions being fed at you, but I didn't want to, stop you from sharing your story of who you are and what you have going on with your life right now. It was a point where Ashley was saying that's the worst to be put down when you're trying to build yourself up. Yes, I mean, it was during your story, man. There was a few points where it's just, it's very heartbreaking to know that people, again, when they want to kick you while you're down, they don't want to help uplift you.
Yeah.
There was a point where my mom says recovery is the one time you are allowed to be selfish. You have to get your tools for life, continue your recovery, and progress forward one day at a time. Gaines says one thing that's guaranteed is that we get older every day. Surround yourself with people that want to uplift you. And it's like everybody is saying, your determination is very admirable. But before, again, I want to say a couple things because this is a big week. This is a big week for our society in general. Yesterday was 9/11. It was 18 years since the day 3,000 people lost their lives just going to work every day, like most of us do. It's a day that's a very dark day for American history, and it's going to continue to live on for us. And again, I do, I feel bad for all the families that are still and will always be affected by the events that took place on 9/11/2001. The day before 9/11, September 10th, is World Suicide Prevention Day. Again, this whole month is, the whole month of September is National Suicide Prevention Month. But I want to keep making that a theme. I want to talk about that as much as possible. Even like you shared, James. We shouldn't restrict this conversation just to that to this month. We lose over 800,000 people each year to suicide. So if you're out there listening to this, just know that you are important, you are loved, you matter, and there's a light for you at the end of the tunnel. Now, if you have people that seem to be a little bit more withdrawn or been a little bit more negative about things that they are experiencing in life, check in on those people. Those who are suicidal often appear, sometimes they appear fine, and they still turn up to work every day. It's always a good gesture to reach out to someone. Someone comes to your mind, reach out to them because you don't know how much that could mean to that person to do that. So that's my advice about it. Again, this is this whole month is National Suicide Prevention Month. So as much as I possibly can, when I'm behind a microphone, I'm going to talk about it this month.
Yeah. So one good sign for my side is if you are wondering when to reach out to somebody, if you haven't talked to somebody within a couple of days that you usually have really good conversations with and stuff like that, you have a really good connection. If you go days without talking to somebody or even a week or 2 weeks, that's probably a good sign that you need to reach out to them. regardless of what's going on. Usually, for me, that's usually how I isolate is, I'll get myself out and then I'll start thinking about, things that's happened in the past, and I'll start isolating and literally sit in my apartment for days on end. It's just another part of dealing with the whole depression thing. And that's when, I know personally that I have to do something and get out and go have a cup of coffee or something.
So, I mean, you do bring up a good point, man. Someone that you talk to regularly, all of a sudden you stop hearing from them for like a day or two. Yeah. Again, man, it doesn't hurt to reach out to somebody. And people need to put their pride to the side and the whole, not double texting someone thing, or I text that person last, they didn't text me back. Forget all that, man. It's bigger than that. Put your pride to the side, that silly pride to the side, and reach out to people.
Yep.
So I want to thank you for coming on, James. I mean, right now we're at about the 46-minute mark. I want to say that I do appreciate you sharing your story and putting everybody that's listening to you inside your shoes and let us know where you're at right now. The chat room has backed you. People that will listen back to this podcast will back you. I mean, you have my support. Again, I'm gonna connect you with Gaines, and I told you I was gonna connect you with a couple people. Just so you guys to get to talking and having conversations and stuff and see how that goes from there. So
right.
I want to ask you, before we get out of here, James, you got any last words of advice or any last things you want to say to the chat room?
Yeah, I just appreciate the support from everybody, even the people that don't truly understand the depths of it. But, and I hope that people will follow my Instagram. It's James Koziar. You'll see the journey that is my recovery alongside my dog Dusty. So just in case people want to watch as we get through this thing and see where we go. But yeah, I truly appreciate the people that support me, the programs that are out there, and I pray that there are more changes and more light shed on this thing of mental illness, because it's a lot more deep than just a label and the stigma. I mean, it ties into everything that's going on in the world right now. It ties into alcoholism, the drug industry. I mean, it ties into all of it, and including the judicial system. Yeah, that's what I want to work towards, is shining a light on all of those things that how they affect mental illness in people, and how these programs and stuff do not help with the moral guidance that the human race needs.
Again, thank you, James, for coming on, and thank you for sharing your story with everybody. I want to thank everybody who tuned in live tonight. I really do appreciate you guys. I want to thank everybody who subscribed to Let's Talk It Out Network, everyone who's listening back. I mean, every one of you are very important to me, and the reason why this show goes on. My mom says, thank you for sharing, James. God bless you, and give you the strength and hope tremendously that you need. So, I
appreciate it. I really do.
Alrighty. Well, guys, we know what time it is. I'll be back to talk to you guys next Thursday at 8 o'clock. Unless something changes. If something changes, then I'll be sure to update you guys on that. But until then, you guys have a good weekend.